Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, welcome to the IDCTA live stream educational videos. I just have a special guest with us. First off, I want to make a announcement here to mute your device if you're on, so we don't have any background noise. Well, some of us we're off to our first show, and some of us are show veterans. But every time we go to a show, we could see a lot of moving parts out there. And one of the biggest moving parts is the TD. And I know for me personally, officials get kind of daunting. So I want to make sure I follow the rules and stay within the lines. And also I want to feel like I have a friendly person to go to when I'm a little shady on the rules, or if I need some help. One of the friendliest faces out there is the TD, and that's Matt Trynoski. He's one of Area 4's own. He's also a competitor, a judge, and he's an official TD. And he's been doing a lot of shows in the area and outside the area. And I thought he graciously is coming on this interview so we could get to know him a little bit more in his officiating capacities, and put the friendly face behind the official. So welcome to the interview, Matt.
Thanks for having me. Really glad to be here, and hope I can offer some good insights to everybody.
Well, thank you. Let's give a brief introduction to yourself. What's your career as far as eventing goes, and what do you do now?
Well, I've been at this game for quite a few years. I had my first introduction to helping prep a course and build a course in 1968. And so I've seen a lot of changes in the sport from that time. Of course, I didn't know a darn thing, very little about horses at the time, and got sort of thrown into it. But over the years, I've competed eventing, came up through Pony Club, eventing, dressage shows, jumper shows, did some fox hunting, ran a few steeplechase races when St. James first started their race course there at St. James Farm in Warrenville. That inaugural race in God, what year was that? 85, I think.
That's right.
So been around the block, ridden with a lot of people over the years. Quite a bit of training with Jessica Ransenhausen and Betsy Steiner. A lot of notable, upper level event riders that I've either taken lessons or clinics with over the years. And so I've knocked around quite a bit. And getting older, like all of us, is decided it was time that I was going to do less competing, and officiating was looking more and more interesting to me. I'd actually started as a TD years ago, and it just didn't fit into my program or schedule. So now it did a few years back, and I threw my hat in the ring to do that training, and now I'm here about 6 years out of being actively both technical delegate, and when Eric, when you introduced as far as a TD, a lot of people will say TD, what is that? Especially if they're not involved in horses or eventing. But everybody should know it's a technical delegate. I don't know the history of where that term came from, but we all know it as the TD. Mm-hmm. And hopefully I can shed some light onto that officiating role here this evening.
Well, tell us a little bit, what are some of the responsibilities of a TD?
Well, I think first and foremost, both the technical delegate and the judge, main responsibility is that we can produce or make sure that there's a fair and level playing field for everybody. So that we have these set of rules for everybody's benefit, everybody's welfare, the horses and riders' welfare, the organizers' welfare, so that we can ensure that everybody's playing by the rules, that the course designer is involved, the quality of the courses, the fairness of the courses, the actual technical aspect of the courses, So all of those things are the nuts and bolts that we're responsible for. But, we are there to ensure that the competitors have a fair time in terms of the rules, but also educational and then safe.
So it's not just the rules during the competition, it's the rules in preparation of the competition too, and making sure that the jumps are at the right height and
Right.
And all that. And the arenas are on flat ground, I'm guessing. And
Yeah, I mean, there's, we have, and if you go around this country and you go to different events at different venues, we got a big country. We've got lots of different kinds of ground. We've got lots of different quality of officials in different areas because of their experience. And our goal is that we do have a standard. And, wherever we go is that we have the same standard, whether you're doing a horse trial in Wisconsin or you're doing a horse trial in North Carolina. We're looking for the same thing. So that, that preparation, even before the first competitor shows up, is very important.
So how many days in advance do you see the course and see the show site? Do you go in advance before a show?
Yeah, and it depends on the venue. If I've never been to a venue at all, I'm going to go an extra day early just to get familiar with it. If it's a venue that I'm very familiar with the course designer I'm very familiar with, then my job is not that it's that much easier, but I know I can get things done a little quicker, so that it may not go, it may not have to go 2 days ahead of time, but definitely we're there a day to a day and a half before the competitors show up. So for example, hopefully people know this, but our set time is 3 p.m. the day before dressage runs is when the courses are open for inspection by riders. So that may mean if it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday show, by 3 p.m. on Thursday, the courses have been inspected. Every jump has been measured, distance are measured to double check the distance are corrected around the maps, those kinds of things. And if you have an event that's running, beginner, novice up through advanced, that's a lot of courses and a lot of jumps to measure. And that means early Wednesday morning start to make sure all that's done and ready to go by 3 p.m. on the Thursday, for example.
What about after the event? Here you have a show that's run, and how do you report all this information after the show? I mean, I'm guessing there's a lot of paperwork afterwards.
Yeah, there's a fair bit. And again, it depends on how well the show is run. If you have a show that has organizational problems, or you have bad weather, or, if we have a lot of falls, every one of those falls is documented. So we have a fall report on every rider that goes off. That's why it's important that anybody that does have a fall is checked out by the safety coordinator or medical personnel, because there's a piece of paperwork. Anytime a person hits the ground off their horse, an unauthorized dismount, they're going to have a paperwork on them. If there's an injury, now it's an additional piece of paperwork. So all of those kind of reports, fall reports, accident reports, all of those have to be, they all go to USEF. And then there is a fairly lengthy technical delegate report that follows up afterwards with all the details. Schedule on time, et cetera, et cetera.
Can competitors approach you about any concerns or complaints that you can report or tend to? How does somebody approach you?
Well, definitely, competitors can approach the technical delegate or judges. You're not supposed to approach the judges about your individual ride, like after dressage or something, but definitely, beforehand, if you're dealing with questions about a course or about a jump, all events are going to have a rider rep. So organizer goes through and asks a competitor, somebody who's competing that on the weekend, to act as the rider rep. So that's one possibility. If you have a concern about a jump on a course or anything about footing or anything going on, is when you're walking, your rider rep could be, it doesn't have to be, that could be your first approach. Definitely you could take it directly to the technical delegate or to the president of the ground jury. All that is fine. Any one of those could be your avenues if you have any questions or concerns about anything that's going to go on that weekend. So that, but we try to be very approachable. Maybe, it's a phone contact. Maybe we don't get back to you immediately, but we definitely get back to you as soon as possible in that situation.
What about some of the challenges you face as a TD out there?
Well, I think, we want a very smooth operation. So sometimes your organizing committee, they're either maybe new at it, or we have some that are all volunteer based, and you have others that are more professionally run, but sometimes there's a bit more hand holding, by the technical delegate. So I get there, that day ahead of time, and maybe jumps aren't in place, or flags aren't in place, or there's bad footing issues somewhere, so those are all challenges that you have a very small window of time to address and get fixed before that course is opening. Quality of stabling comes under my purview as far as, I'm going to go through the stabling. Is the stabling adequate? Is it safe? That type of thing. Definitely with COVID, we had a whole different, ball game going on with different protocols for COVID, in terms of the shows,
That was a
bigger thing the last
couple.
Yeah, for everybody, and organizers and competitors, and isolation stalls, horses welfare and communicable diseases on there. So having isolation, facility available in the event that a horse shows up with running a fever or whatever, we got to isolate them, so making sure all of those nuts and bolts are in place. And if you have a short window to do all that, and if the organizing committee is, on the stick and they got everything, makes my life a lot easier as the official.
But as far as if there's any show organizers on here, you probably have to do more delegating than anything. And hopefully the horse show has enough people that they can delegate to pull off those jobs.
Right, exactly. And it comes down to, you have some organizers that are, they got too many irons in the fire and they're trying to do everything.
Right.
And that becomes a challenge, and I think what helps too is if there's pre-event communication. So if I'm as a technical delegate, I've been hired by that organizer, weeks in advance. So having a phone conversation, a month out or 2 weeks out or whatever, it does help too, to make sure that things are running smoothly, things are getting prepped at a timely fashion, so that when I do arrive, I can go right to work with making sure the courses are going to be ready to be opened on time, and that sort of thing.
So you're still a competitor, and
Correct.
What are, being a TD, what are some of the benefits behind you being a competitor and being a TD? I'm guessing the rules inside out.
Yeah, I'd say from a competitor standpoint, my training to be a judge was probably more insightful or beneficial, both as a competitor and then also as an instructor or coach, because having a better handle on really what is the judge looking for in the dressage ring. So that has definitely molded some of my training techniques and coaching techniques. And you'd be surprised at what a judge can really clearly see from sitting in their car at sea and what they can't see. So,
Right.
from that practice and training, you say, okay, you can, it's not that you're getting away with things, but you can enhance your performance, or the other way, you can detract from your performance by what is, visible from the judge's perspective. But also understanding better what the standard is that a judge has been trained to look for, and bringing those best things out for that horse and rider, and you practice it, so the technical delegate job or role, yes, learning better the rules and knowing those kinds of things is helpful, but from the judge training is probably more beneficial for a competitor and or coach, for me anyway.
Yeah. Well, you've been a great steward to the sport. And so, I always am curious. We have a lot of volunteers out there. We have, and, being a steward doesn't, it doesn't pay enough to make a really good livelihood on. So tell me a little bit why and how you became an official. Just your personal experience stepping into it, just so that others can see that through an example as well, why we all participate in a sport like this and why we want to become stewards, or how we become stewards behind this sport.
Well, I think for me, as I said a moment ago, is, getting older, I can see my riding or competitive career not stopping, but definitely changing, from riding at an upper level, doing less and less and less from that avenue. And my daughter a couple years ago decided to get back into competition, so she stole my horse. So I didn't have one to actively compete on, or I knew that was changing. So, but I figured, well, my goal, first of all, was course design. I was getting much more interested in the intricacies of really educational for the horse and rider course design. And that was my first avenue. But I found that difficult in terms of the apprenticing. The course designer people are very individuals, and it was really difficult to schedule with them for the apprenticing that was required. It just didn't fit into my schedule and fitting into their schedule. So the technical delegate and the judging became the alternative from that perspective. That was much more doable, much more realistic in my schedule and calendar, being able to follow through on that. And just to give people an idea, we probably in this country have some of the best training. I've talked to a lot of judges that have worked in Europe, and especially England, and they don't have near the detail that we do in terms of what people do go through with our training seminars, the format that how we do the apprenticing, et cetera, that is required. But the USEA is the educational entity. So all of that education of judges is done by the USEA, where the USEF is the licensing component. So we do all the training, do all the apprenticing through USEA. We do the final examination is held by the USEA, and then all of those documents and all of that detail gets turned over to the USEF, and they're the ones that basically do the rubber stamp and award the licensing to be technical delegate, judge, etc.
So if you wanted to start your road to being an official, go to the USEA site and you can find out.
Correct. Yep. And it's all laid out there, and it comes from both sides, because the USEF, it's actually their procedure in terms of the outline of the apprenticing requirements and things like that. What are the basic requirements to become an official is all part of USEF in terms of their protocol, where the USEA is the one that actually does the seminars and does the training programs and things like that. So there's a system with USEF where you have to have so many points, and you can get points as a competitor. The higher level you've competed at, the more points. You can get points as an organizer. You can get points as being the safety coordinator. So all those various jobs that make up a horse trial, an event, you can, if you're involved and you've done that and it's documented, you can earn points. And you have to have, I don't remember the exact number right now, but you have to have so many points to be eligible to become an official. Then you go through the seminar, you go through the training programs, you go through the apprenticing, and eventually a final exam.
On average, how long does it take?
Well, you have to get it all done within 3 years. So once you start the process, all of your seminars and all your documentation and all apprenticing is valid for a 3-year period. So by the end of that 3 years, you'd have to do your final exam. I know people that have done it in 1 year. I think my first one, about 18 months, because from just the way the scheduling went to get it all, to get everything done from start to finish.
And it appears that the USEA has a real active program that I think to be an official, you could, if you're really determined, you could be pretty, it could be pretty efficient. It seems like it has a lot to offer.
You know, the thing that is difficult is the actual training seminars are quite a production, and so they're not happening. They're only going to happen once a year. I mean,
Okay.
you're going to have a session that covers jumping, for example, and that one was just held approximately a month ago in Aiken area in South Carolina. So you have a session. You have 2 different sessions for dressage. One of them is done usually. Well, now they're doing a lot with video, so it's done not with live horses. Some of them will do demonstration riders, but you have a session for judges to cover the basics of what you deal with dressage as far as dressage judging. And then you have another one that's more involved, actually judging tests where you do have live demonstration riders and so on. So you basically have 3 seminar sessions, 2 that cover dressage, 1 that covers all the different aspects of jumping and course design and whatnot. And then you're apprenticing. You've got different amounts of apprenticing that you have to do before a final exam.
So how do you balance now? You're running a barn, you are a coach, you're a competitor, you're a judge. How many events a year on average are you officiating at, judging or being a technical delegate?
Well, first of all, the biggest problem I have is my students say, "Oh, you're going away again." So being away is difficult for them because of the scheduling, and then also there's limitations of if they're one of my students, is what they can do at an event, whether they can compete at that event or not, is a conflict of interest problem. So if I'm the president of the ground jury, that means I have the potential of making a ruling on whatever they're doing. So they cannot compete at an event that I'm the president of the ground jury, for example. And they definitely couldn't ride in my ring. If I'm just a dressage judge, I have to call the secretary of the organizer ahead of time and make sure that they are not riding under me in the dressage ring. If they have any kind of affiliation like that. So there's some conflicts there. So, if I'm judging or officiating out of the area, that's not so much of a problem. If I'm fishing anywhere close by, then there's potential conflicts there. So it's a juggling act to make that all work. This year, for example, is going to be my busiest year, and right now on calendar I have 16 different events.
Wow. Do you do anything
from February till the end of October?
Do you do anything with, let's say, are you licensed to be able to do a CCI, even up to a 5-star event?
Yeah, I'm not licensed yet at FEI, but I was just at Chat Hills, they're international, working as assistant TD. So as an assistant TD underneath an FEI, then I'm officiating at that event. But that head FEI vet, or I'm sorry, FEI TD is really the one that falls under their jurisdiction, and I'm just there as an extra hand. But officially on the list as assistant TD.
Is this something you're working towards?
Yeah, it's I'm not getting any younger, Eric. So, a few years ago, FEI had a 70-year age limit. So at 70 years old, everybody aged out at FEI as an FEI official. They have changed that. They have changed that because they don't have enough officials coming up through the ranks to fill those spots, and so they've changed that. So now that's doable for me to go through that, because that's a whole nother set of apprenticing and whatnot to do an FEI license. So that's a possibility. But
well, we're not going to talk about age, but I wouldn't be able to tell what you look like you have a lot of years on you. So
so now just this last August, and then I did the exam for the large RTD. So I was a small R, now I'm a large R, which allows me to officiate up through including intermediate. But that also now allows me to apply to be an FEI level one and two FEI TD as well. So that.
What does that mean? The level 1 or level 2 FEI?
But then you're officiating up to through 2-star.
Oh, okay.
And then again, you'd have to go on up the levels to do 3-star and 4-star and so on. So they have so that's why we use the letters. So example, small R, technical delegate and or judge, we can officiate up to and including prelim.
Okay.
Large R includes your intermediate level, and S includes advanced. So those are three different levels for at our national USEF licensing.
Gotcha.
So that's how that works.
So do you have any favorite shows?
I don't know. I wouldn't call it favorite. I would say, there's venues and organizations that make things a lot easier. I don't know if anybody here has competed at the Ocala Horse Park, but it's a venue that really excels in everything and all different aspects. The organizational committee is top notch, those kinds of things. So I've enjoyed working down there. Pine Top in Thompson, Georgia. I've been there quite a few times. I did a lot of my apprenticing there. So those people have been really good to me. And I've, it's sort of it's an older style event on a family farm, and it has that whole different atmosphere. So it's a very close-knit family group that runs, and they've got volunteers that have been volunteering for them for 30 years. Same people have been volunteering for 30, and they just celebrated their 30th anniversary.
Those are the type of events we grew up on here in the Midwest. Exactly. Is those family-run events that are just kind of home for us, and I know Pine Top is one of those. Yeah.
So it's a good feel. So there's things like you can get really glitzy, and you go places like Tryon and things like that. That's a little whole different feel. And definitely the horse park. I mean, I think all of us, especially in the Midwest, are very comfortable at the Kentucky Horse Park. And again, they've got top-notch organizations, that run the event there. So all of those are fun to be with.
That's super, man.
And this last couple of years, I was able to go back to New York, where I grew up in Genesee Valley area. So I'm officiating there, and I'm running into people there that I first started riding with, almost 50 years ago. So that's been an interesting trip to see those folks. And again, it's not a top-notch facility. It's a lot of volunteers. People come and go. A little more of a homespun kind of atmosphere, but an interesting venue.
Well, we're really happy to have you in Area 4 here as an official. And I know when I go to an event and I recognize a technical delegate or some of the judges or the announcer, like when Brian O'Connor is announcing at a show that I haven't been to, it's a warm feeling that that, okay, I'm amongst people that I know and they feel more comfortable at a show. And you being an official at a show makes me feel very comfortable being at that show, knowing that we're on a good playing field. So you're a great benefit here in Area 4. I'd like to.
Things there. I think, when we were talking earlier about availability to the competitors. I think, once we get the show running, and there is those teaching moments, especially at the lower levels. People have refusals. They don't think they did. The horse stepped back at the drop or the ditch. They don't think they did. Those kinds of things I have to address when they have inquiries about it. Excessive use of the stick, those kinds of things, especially at the lower levels, those all become educational teaching moments to help those people better understand those rules and what they're there for. Then we get into the upper level riders who ideally should know better. Professionals that have 2 or 3 or 4 horses, we don't cut them as much slack because, they're not just the weekend warriors. They're out there working, making a living doing it,
Right.
and they need to know the rule. And it's not that we, penalize them more so, but definitely the beginner novice riders, we're going to all educational, unless it's severe, but all educational before we start throwing the book at anybody. And that's part of the job during the competition is, is following up on those kinds of things. So people should not be upset that at the finish line of cross country, I walk up to them and say, "Hi, I'm the technical delegate this weekend. We need to have a chat," because they're about something they did on cross country.
I've had one of those chats with you, Matt, and I really appreciate you taking me aside because I haven't been doing it for a while. I've been off, and then I come back to competition, and I was like, "Oh boy, I didn't know it was that strict." So,
and like I say, those kind of things, somebody could say, "Oh darn, that's being abusive," versus, that doesn't follow the rules, and watch it, that kind of thing. So it's all going to take it, it's all going to be handled in different veins, depending on severity.
I'd like to open the board for some questions. We have a little bit of time left. Is there anybody that has
there's the first one. That? The first one that came in was, what has been your most awkward moment during a competition? For example, a competitor who is difficult with the TD chatting to them, has difficulty with the deep. What has been your most awkward moments?
I guess definitely what they just said. If somebody that you address them with something and they get very defensive about, that I'm pointing out a rule infraction or something like that. And as I was just talking with Eric, as far as, I like it to be a teaching moment. And that's where I approach it as. They say, "Hey, wait a minute, this is what happened," or tell me what happened. Usually I start, "How'd your ride go?" And if they start giving me a completely different picture than what the jump judge said, about, how rough they were with the horse or something like that, then those get a little awkward because it's a he said, she said kind of situation. And trying to smooth that out and have them understand that they need. And I think a big thing too is that we are very, very visible to the general public. And if we do have spectators out there that are not horse savvy at all, and they see things that are not, nice and comfortable and whatnot, it makes a bad picture for the sport. So that's a lot of what we're doing is trying to make sure people understand that they are on stage, and that they can understand the rules. They're there for a reason, but also the perspective of whoever else is seeing what's going on. So that's probably the hardest awkward moments, other than the little girls that I make cry when I tell them that they can't use their stick so much on their horse.
Well, we have another question.
I'm not a little girl, Matt.
No, but I've been known to make a couple of them cry, unfortunately.
I know. I was the same.
At Chat Hills in February, there was the finish line right near the control tower, and they were all taking bets on, because I was being called over to have a discussion with somebody, and they were all taking bets of if I was going to make her cry or not.
Oh dear. There's another question in the same line, and this one is, when should the competitor approach the TD? Is it correct to tell the TD if you see abuse?
Oh, definitely. Anytime sometimes, we can't be everywhere, right? So it's in the warm-up ring, maybe it's in the stable area, definitely. And the big thing is documenting it, writing it down. If we have a bona fide abuse situation, there is a lengthy eyewitness abuse report that I have to fill out, those kinds of things. So the more details we can have, because if we just have, "Oh, I saw somebody, yanking on that horse and I didn't like it," I have to take that information. I have to go and investigate it. Sometimes that's difficult because we're in the middle of running horse cross country or whatever. The president of the ground jury has to go investigate it to then just determine whether it's credible or not and how we pursue it. But But definitely you see a problem, please, please, please bring it to our attention. Because again, if you're seeing it, other people are seeing it, and that does not look good for the sport. So don't hesitate to let us know.
On that front, I'm guessing, dangerous riding on cross country.
Yeah, it's a whole different situation. Okay.
Boy, because you could have somebody report dangerous riding, but they can't really pull them up right away. But if it gets reported back to you and judge after judge, where's the authority there that somebody gets pulled up, and who pulls them up?
Well, a new rule this year is the course designer, cross-country course designer, if they are present, which they do not have to be, but quite often the bigger events they are. So now the cross-country course designer has the authority to also pull somebody up. But the technical delegate, any members of the ground jury, we all have that capability of pulling somebody up if we deem they are in a dangerous riding situation. And like I say, new this year, the course designer is added to that list. We can also deputize. So basically, ICP level 4. Yeah, ICP level 4. If they happen to be there and we have a questionable ride that we know it's going to be out there, we can ask them to basically act as a deputy, and we can give them authority to pull them up. Other members that have ridden on the team, so they get another job. Anybody that's ridden for the US, they can be deputized to act as another set of eyes out there to pull somebody up. And even if they are out there just being a set of eyes and they call us and they say, oh yeah, I saw this one at jump number 4 and they end this. And then we go out and take a closer look. But you're on the course 5-6 minutes. And if we don't get a report of somebody looking dangerous early enough on, they may have a crash and burn before we can pull them up.
Yeah.
If it looks really dangerous.
Great question.
So that's a really difficult situation because everything is happening in the moment, and it's hard. And unless we have some reason to be watching.
Oh. You froze there, Matt.
Somebody, if you have it, that dressage, what's that?
You were frozen there for a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Audio still working?
Yeah, we got audio now.
So if you have a really horrible bad dressage ride, really out of control, disobedient, etc., that dressage judge is going to call me and they're going to say, oh, number so and so, keep an eye on them, and we are.
Yeah, very good.
We're going to watch them more. That. So there's a bunch of set of eyes, but yeah, that is a difficult situation we're dealing with. But dangerous rides. And that's about, most people, or hopefully everybody is aware of the compulsory retirement rule in show jumping now. Started last June
That's right.
1 is 20 penalties. So you have 20 penalty points or more, but up to 20 penalty points at show jumping. You are CR'd or compulsory retirement, and you're done. So if we do show jumping before cross country, you're not going to be allowed to run cross country with 20 penalties. And that's a combination of rails, stops, refusals, runouts, recircles, or whatever. Total of 20 points.
Yeah.
So, but that's a safety issue. Statistically, people that are having that much trouble show jumping have a much greater potential of having a fall or problem cross country.
Yeah. Are there any other questions out there?
I don't see any right now on the chat.
Well, Matt, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the Zoom. And anyone here on the Zoom, if you see Matt as a TD, say hi and thank you. And really appreciate your stewardship behind the sport and preserving the sport.
There's one more question here that I think is a really good one. It just came in.
Okay. Go ahead.
How can your knowledge trickle down to the mini events? Because we have in our area, we have like 5 or 6 mini events that are not covered by any authority, and a lot of times that the knowledge that the TDs have, you know, would be incredibly helpful to these barns that are running the mini events.
Right. So I agree. I mean, I've done a little bit, or I've competed over the year at some of the schooling shows, and sometimes I just have to shake my head and say, what are these people thinking about? They just have to read the rule book on a lot of it. They have to be knowledgeable about the rules. I last year, and I hope I made a difference on some of it. I will be there this year. Is the Fox River Valley Pony Club Mini, which is coming up in a few weeks. So I've been involved there, both acting as the TD and president of the ground jury. So I'm overseeing all of that kind of course and things like that.
I would probably add on to the maybe smaller mini events, other barns that want to run an event or unrecognized event is to attend Fox River Valley mini event, because Matt is obviously an official there, and they could see a little bit more of the rules and how that's run, and ask any questions there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely during the event, I'll be strapped for time to doing much. But if anybody, is interested, that is an organizer of those, and they're interested in getting some tips, and more than happy to have a phone conversation with them and help them out in that way. The other thing is I encourage them. Right now, off the top of my head, I can't think of a up and coming TD in the area 4, but definitely those people that have gone through the training program, they've just got their license, they need to get mileage. So even if hiring them, they're going to, I mean, I honestly, I worked a lot of events as small RTD for no fee, because I wanted the experience and I wanted the credentials to be able to get my large R, to get that step up. So small R's, if they're looking for experience, having that mileage at a mini event, a little schooling show, would be very, very valuable for them. So that'd be the other thing, to reach out to the USCA of who is the new and upcoming small R's, and help them get mileage, and then the events get a little more exposure as well.
That's a great tip, Matt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of things I want to add, whoever's out listening, is quite often people will ask me, what can I do as a competitor? I hope they can see this, but hopefully they recognize what this is.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the 2022 rule book. They should have one in their tech trunk or on their smartphone or whatever, but have that available. If they have questions, refer to the rules. Definitely approaching the TD for clarification on those rules is helpful, at the shows, things like that. And lastly, what they can do as a competitor is volunteer. All of these events do not operate with lots and lots and lots of volunteers. And, there's going to be 1,000,001 things to do. So that would be, helpful for the event and helpful for their education. If you're the in-gate steward at one event, you'll have a whole new appreciation for what goes on when you're warming up in the dressage or show jumping, with what that in-gate steward has to deal with. That it can be a really tough job.
That's excellent advice, Matt. And I know too, once you start giving to a sport, things just magically happen for you too in giving back. It just is it's a two-way street, and you learn a lot just being around shows like this. So again, great advice, Matt. Thank you.
Okay.
You've had lots and lots of thank yous in the chat. So I'd like to add mine to that. This has been a wonderful session, and we're so glad you could come here, be with us.
Right. I'm more than happy to. And anybody who else wants to reach out, any other specific questions later on, don't hesitate. How we share contact information. I know, folks can find me on Facebook or whatever, and go from there, or however you'd like to reach out. And with any other questions, happy to help.
Don't be surprised if you don't start hearing from some of us.
Okay, very good.
Thank you so much, Matt. And we look forward to seeing you at shows as a competitor, judge, or TD. So thank you very
All right.
much.
And everybody else have a great competition season coming up here.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
one.